is my first time in Estonia, and I'm very impressed with the level of rider and also the level of horse. I think is fantastic. The riders have quite a good knowledge of everything. I think psychology is a new topic for them and not something that they've done or heard of before, so they've had to do a lot of learning this week. But yeah, Estonia is quite different from how I expected. I didn't know what to expect. But the quality of rider is excellent, the horses are good, so it's been a really nice experience here. So I would say the three biggest problems that I see, and it's not just in Estonia, it's everywhere. The first is the confidence, always. Riders seem to struggle a little bit with confidence. I think here what's interesting is that there's not so many riders and it's quite a small team. So there's a bit of problem with comparison. So they're always comparing to the next person. So they put lots of pressure on themselves, I think. And then that leads us on to pressure. So pressure is always an issue for riders in dealing with it. From ponies up until you are in the biggest Grand Prix in the world, you have to learn about pressure. Here in Estonia as well, because there's not so many shows, then I think there seems to be a lot of pressure when they do go to a big show. And then the third issue I would say is probably just slowing down a little bit and starting to understand that it's not just a physical sport, it's actually a mental sport. And the more they start to think about what they're doing, the easier it gets and the quicker their horse and themselves can understand and make improvements. So when they slow down their thinking, they start to think about what their bodies are doing, how they're doing it. They start to think in a process way rather than just thinking about the results all the time. And that's when they really start to see the skills. But for me, that's a global thing for young riders, and I think they've learned a lot this week. Yeah, so for me, dealing with pressure in a competition is something that everybody has to manage, no matter what level they're dealing with. So my first tip is to always make a goal that's related to a skill. So you really, if you're quite nervous, you want to focus in on something that you have control of, a skill that you have control. Things like focusing on your rhythm and straightness. Those two things can be really important, and it gives the brain something to actually focus on rather than overthinking everything. Secondly, pressure and nerves and anxiety is experienced through your body. So it's a real bodily experience. You'll get a raised heart rate, your breathing becomes shallow. Sometimes you get quite a lot of tension, which you'll see in riders that you don't see at home. So it's important that you use your body to release the pressure. So using lots of breathing, relaxation techniques, letting out the tension out of your muscles. You'll see at the 5-star events now, the riders often walk around with their feet out of the stirrups. It's a real tool to drop out the tension and the energy and reconnect with their horse. So that's important. And then the final tip, I think, is about how you analyze your rounds to deal with the pressure. So show jumping is a sport, and sport's supposed to be fun. So it's important not to constantly beat yourself up all the time, and actually come away always thinking of what you did do well, and then take away one or two things that you need to improve on. Otherwise it'll never be a fun experience. Yeah, so I work with riders all over the world, and a lot of them, alongside riders, they also have to run a business. So with that comes a lot of mental demands. They, could be running their stable, so they have to worry about staff, accounts, all the things that are coming in, like feed and hay. They have to be competing themselves, so they have that pressure. They have clients that they're training. They have media demands. They have a lot of things going on. They're trying to buy and sell horses. They're always on the phone. So for me, I really work with them to help put some structure on their day, to help them understand how they can better communicate with staff, how they can communicate with family better, how they can make their day work for them rather than just being on a treadmill running the whole time. So when I work with athletes, you have to look at the big picture, and often that their business comes into that, and how they're running their business can really affect their performance. So yeah, I do lots of business coaching and figuring out what their day could look like, set some goals for them, help them get focused on certain tasks, look at where they're putting all their energy and not enough energy, so getting balance, things like that. Whenever I work with riders, it's really important that we look at the relationships that are involved in their riding, and often parents play a massive role. They're absolutely necessary in most cases for finance, support, logistics, travel, all that type of things. So they play a really important role, but it's also important that parents play a parent role and not a coach role, which can sometimes happen. So for me, the parents are there to support their children, and that support should come from the side of the arena. So I always say, and I openly talk with parents about, working out how they can best communicate with their children, and then asking their children where they would like them to be. So maybe it's that they just see them sitting at the side of the arena, and maybe they're not in the warm-up arena, things like that. Also, I always say that the house is the safe zone. So when they go home and they're in the house, they shouldn't have to talk about how they performed. So that can happen in the car, it can happen at the stable, it can happen at the horse box, whatever, but the house should be home, and you don't need to bring performance back into the home. In Ireland, there's a lot of families are very involved with horses, so it's been a generational sport. So that can be quite a challenge to manage. But it's fine to talk about horses in the house, but maybe we leave the performance stuff till after the competition. It depends on the country, actually. In a lot of countries, the focus is on the development on the horse for sales. So teenagers and young adults will be riding horses, and their main aim is to sell them. So it's not so results focused. But here in Estonia, it does seem quite results focused, and they tend to hang on to their horses for longer periods of time. It's good to be focused on the result when you are targeting a certain competition and you're prepared and you're going there to win or compete, but it's not so good to be always focused on the result at every show you go to, because that doesn't allow for skills development. If you talk about or focus about results all the time, the problem is it puts a lot of pressure on you, and you actually can't really control the results when you think about it, because you have no idea what other horses are in the class, who's faster than you, what the course is like, if it suits your horse, how your horse comes out that day. So you can't really control that. So if you constantly focus on the result, it tends to take away the enjoyment of the day. So I always encourage people to focus on the process more. So think about how they're improving their riding, what skills they want to improve that day, and then be able to analyze that way. It is good to have results, obviously, and we all want to have results, but I think to think about it all the time and it be the only thing that's valued is the wrong direction to go.